show is what I know. They bring in all these boys and girls all around the whole wide world. Prison show is what I know, but here we go. Prison show is what I know. They took me from my home, I can't get back to my family. I wanna hold just to get it back. Oh, I can't do this no more. It's the Imprisoned prison show.
I first met Bukola on a Sunday morning, I believe, and I said, I need to learn your name. And so I did, and then I found a little cohort about this high, and Sam was with Bukola, and we have just been delighted by meeting these two people. They've become part of our family. We love them dearly. Bukola came from Lagos, I'll get it right, Nigeria. And she came in the year 2005 to Ramsey. And the United Methodist Women have been talking about human trafficking at the university when we gather for the School of Christian Missions. And you know what? We never had any idea that it would be as close to home as it is right here. We know that we're close to Duluth, Minnesota, and that there are large ships that come in from Europe and so forth, and they go out with some cargo that they did not arrive with. And I'm sad to say that is the case. So we have had our eyes opened, and we are going to listen to Bukola's personal experience, and she has experienced domestic violence and human trafficking. After 2005 coming to Ramsey, she then came in 2008 to Anoka, but she had been to Alexandra House. And we are so thankful. One of our missions of the month from time to time is Alexandra House. And here we have found someone who's made a personal experience of life-changing developments through the use of Alexandra House Ministries. And we rejoice in that. We rejoice in that. And little Sam found a home there and a place for children to play with, too. Bukola has had a traditional marriage in Nigeria, but you're going to hear just exactly what perhaps some of that entailed. It may not be the story of your marriage or my marriage or the friends that are present here, but nevertheless it plays a big, important part in her life. As she came to the United States in 2005, she was a journalist. She was covering a story for the United Nations. In her own country, she is a renowned journalist, having received many outstanding awards for journalism. And she is still a student today. She's going to Anoka Ramsey and getting additional courses and so forth. When I think of Mother's Day, I think she's a mother, and she's a student, and she's a woman of faith. But she's also an advocate for those that have suffered domestic violence and human trafficking. She is an entrepreneur that I can't believe. She is doing website programs. She has her own show called The Imprisoned Show, and you can get information about it. She's an author and a writer. She's a speaker. She's a fundraiser. She knows the many, many diverse impacts for her talents, her zeal, her faith. She has found many ways to put them into practice. So her faith and good works go right together. She is a super Christian. We learned being in Bible study with her, that she comes from a very, very strong faith family. And she continues to let that faith evidence itself in her day-by-day living. If you were to ask Bukola how old she was, I asked her this morning, I got the answer 16. And I said, you have a 6-year-old boy? And she says, I'm 16. But she's really 36. And if I thought of all the activities that have transpired in those 36 years, I would be overwhelmed. But it is with great joy and great admiration that I introduce to you Bukola Oriola, and she is our speaker for today. Come forward, friend.
Good morning, church. Thank you so much, Annette. I was just pulling her legs. Thank you so much for having me here today. It's a great honor to be here in front of you all. This is my own second chance to live. I didn't know I would be standing here today to share my story, let alone try to help others through advocacy. Because at the point that I entered Alexandra's house, I was a walking corpse. For those of you who have read my book, you would have read that in my book. Because at that point, I couldn't recognize myself in the mirror anymore. And thank God for my son. I was just holding on to him for life support. And I'm grateful to God today for giving me that child. He is my consolation. You know, when I'm in church, it's the time that my emotions come out most, because I am just so grateful for the grace of God. He didn't promise that we will not go through challenges, but He did promise that He will be there for us. And He said heaven and earth may pass away, but not a jot of His word will go without being fulfilled. Only if we keep holding on. And faith helps us to hold on to God, even when we don't see what we want happening. Faith keeps us moving. And I thank God for that grace I've had through faith to be able to hold on to Him. With all I passed through, I was mad. But like Job, I never cursed God. Rather, I was crying for mercy. And I was crying that He shows His face and prove that He is God. And I'm glad to tell you today that indeed God is God. Hold on to Him no matter what, because in the end, He will prove Himself faithful. Human trafficking is not just the modern day slavery. Human trafficking is something that has been even before we came here. Solomon said there is nothing new under the sun. That is true. If we go back into our Bible story, the first person that was trafficked was Joseph. And he was labor trafficked by his own brothers. So anybody, regardless of status, family, education, background, can be a victim of human trafficking. And it doesn't have to be a stranger to be a trafficker. A family member can traffic a loved woman. So we need to keep our eyes open, and we need to show love in our community, even as we do our daily job. It's not something that you see written on the forehead, and most of the time it could be hiding under domestic abuse. But when you dig deeper, you will be surprised to find human trafficking sometimes. It is true that there are so many girls on the street, but they are sex traffic victims. And because they are on the street, it's easy to identify sometimes. But for those in labor trafficking, it's very hard to identify. Someone could even be your co-worker, and that person might be a victim of labor trafficking while he or she is working and somebody else is taking the money. And sometimes when we go around in the neighborhood, we need to show love by just even saying hi. Where I come from, you don't go past your neighbor without saying hi. Even sometimes when you're holding grudge with your neighbor, you still say the hi, but with an attitude. Yes. And here, it is different. You might see somebody today that smiles at you and you say hi. The next day you see that person, you say hi, the person acts as if he doesn't even know you or has never seen you before. I think there is need for this community to be working towards, showing more love among one another. You show a lot of love in giving. Sometimes money is not all. Money does not answer everything. Compassion is more stronger than money. That is why people who are on the sick bed do not want money. They just want somebody to be there for them and show them the love. Even if they are going to die, they just want to know that somebody cares. We need to start showing that we care in our community. Thanks to Annette for the wonderful introduction. You will wonder how I became a victim of human trafficking despite my background in journalism. I thought I knew all as a journalist. But after becoming a victim and getting rescued, I found out that I don't even know anything when it comes to human trafficking. I didn't even know that I was a victim of human trafficking until I became educated. And it is the same for so many victims. They don't know that they are victims. And most people will not know because victims don't speak with their mouths. They speak with their body. Let us pay more attention to body languages. When the story sounds too good to be true, that is when you need to start digging deeper. Because underneath it, there might just be something. And you could be the angel that will be rescuing somebody. In my case, the public health nurse who helped me had been seeing me for over a year before I opened up to her. And what made me to open up to her, it was because over that period of time, I had built trust in her. And when I had to choose between the frying pan and the fire, I decided to jump into this woman's hands. And I'm grateful that I did. And even though she had noticed something wasn't right, but she couldn't place her hand on anything that she could hold. Because sometimes you don't see physical scar to to be able to call the police. And many a times, even if there are scars, they are in hidden places. Or how do you want to know if a woman has been raped and she had a tear and she's fully dressed? How would you know that she has a cut there? Except she's medically examined. So that is why we need to be paying more attention. I was a journalist in Nigeria and I enjoyed my career as a journalist because it gave me the opportunity to meet with different people within and outside Nigeria. I love traveling and I love meeting people. And that job gave me the opportunity to work and play at the same time. I worked 7 days a week. I was a hard worker. I didn't know that there were some people that the same like me. I found them in this country. American citizens in America are hard workers. If you can get 25 hours a day, you will get it. Because there is first shift and second shift and third shift, and it's possible to add fourth shift. I'm sure some employers will be glad to, and not just the employers, but some workers will be willing to go to the fourth shift. And I didn't know that happens until I got here, but I was already used to working 7 days a week. And most of the time on Sundays, I don't even go home when I go to work. I go home on Monday morning because I was responsible for the education desk, meaning that I will not only publish my own stories, but I have to edit stories of some of my other colleagues within and outside Lagos to go on my pages, which were the education pages every week. And my production days were Sundays. So on Sunday, I have to be in the office. I don't go home until the job is done. Sometimes the job is not done until 2 a.m. in the morning or 3 a.m. in the morning. And sometimes I'm able to finish early, and that early will be like 10 p.m. at night. But at that time, I can't go to my parents' home because I live with my parents. In Nigeria, we live with our parents until we are married off. It's not like here where once the child is 18 years old, you kick the child out of the house and say he's an adult or she's an adult. I still saw that on TV yesterday on Ricky Lake show that these parents were trying to kick out their daughter because she was already 18 years old. But in Nigeria, you don't leave your parents until you marry. And those have their own, strengths and weaknesses. So I will not delve into that right now. So when it's too late like that to go home to my parents, I go to a friend's house. That friend was not just anyhow or any kind of friend. That was our family friend because we met in the church and the husband was our house fellowship minister. So we were really, really close, like family members. So I go to their house and sleep till Monday morning and then go home and get back to work. But sometimes when I went to their house, the husband had come to the US at that time. He would call because of the time difference. It will be during the day here, but night time in Nigeria. He would call and speak to the wife, and sometimes wife would tell him that I was around, and he would say hello to me too, and ask what was going on with me and work. Anyhow, there was this fateful night that I was there. That was when I was introduced to my ex-husband on the phone. And when it showed seriousness, I introduced him to my father. My father was my only surviving parent at that time. And his families came to my father to ask for my hand in marriage, and we had a traditional marriage. In Nigeria, there are 3 types of marriages. There is the traditional marriage, which is the oldest form of marriage. It's an agreement between families. And there is the church marriage and the Muslim marriage. And most of the time, the church and the Muslim, they go to court, but sometimes the traditional don't go beyond traditional if they don't want to go beyond that for reasons best known to the families. In my case, we only had a traditional marriage. Even though we still planned to go forward, but it wasn't in Nigeria. And we were planning that it was going to come to Nigeria and then we can go to court. Because if we don't have a documentation to show, I cannot come here and live with him as his wife. Because America does not recognize traditional marriage. They only recognize something on paper. But before then, my job brought me to New York to cover the United Nations in September of 2005. And while I was at the United Nations, they invited me over here. Although that time too, we had never met face to face, but he was always calling me on the phone and we spent hours on the phone. So even when I met him for the first time, it didn't feel like I was just meeting him for the first time. It felt to me like somebody I had known for a long time. And everything was fine, he acted really nice, but when it was time to go back home, because I only had a ticket to last me for 2 months and then go back to Nigeria, he begged me to stay. His family begged me to stay. I have an aunt in New York that I had stayed with. They told her, and she said I should stay because I had been married to this man according to our culture. So I stayed. He promised to go to court here and document the marriage, but he never did. I got pregnant, and immediately after I got pregnant, he acted happy. But as time progresses, his attitude just changed. I didn't understand what was going on at first. And for those of you who know Ramsey is the bush, right? Because when you peep through the window, you can't see anything except from bush. And where I lived, I just peeped through the window, and that's why I have the cover of my book with me peeping through the window. Because I just see bushes, and once in a while I see cars going at 50 miles an hour. That was all. I didn't know how to drive. I couldn't go out at will. I was there isolated for 2 years. In America, that is the land of plenty and food, and people are struggling to lose weight. I was not gaining weight. Even during pregnancy, it was just the pregnancy that was growing. I couldn't eat whatever I craved as a pregnant woman. For those of you who are mothers in this room today, you know what it means to be craving as a pregnant woman. Imagine craving and not being able to eat what you are craving. Not because it was not available, but because somebody was punishing you. I decided to start braiding hair. Whenever we went to church and I see African and American women, I would say, I can braid hair. And they would take telephone number and come to the house to braid hair. Because I was not used to staying idle. Coming from working every day for 7 days to sitting in the house doing nothing was abnormal to me. And they will call and come to the house to have their hair braided. When he found out that I really knew the talent, he decided to exploit me. So I was braiding hair while he was collecting the money. In Minnesota, cold, in winter, I didn't have even winter jacket. And a friend of him who came from United Kingdom and saw what was happening and wouldn't agree with him was the one that bought me my first winter jacket. And not only that, he even gave me his shirt. If I have enough clothes, would a man look at me and give me his shirt? I still have that shirt because that is part of my evidence. I still have the coat because that is part of my evidence. And I didn't know that there was help available. If I knew, I wouldn't have stayed in for so long and continued to suffer. I had my child through an emergency C-section, and those 5 days at the hospital felt like they should extend more than 5 days. I didn't want to go home, but the nurses didn't understand. The doctors didn't understand why I didn't want to go home. I couldn't tell them what I was going through. He had been threatening me with the police and immigration. And the only thing I could do was to call on God. And I'm glad today that He proved Himself faithful. It happened like a dream. As he continued to threaten, he put his threat to work one day and called the police on me. And that changed everything. Thanks to a taxi driver, and through that, I learned to call the public health nurse. And she referred me to Alexandra House. I spent 8 months at Alexandra House. I'm sure this might be a surprise to some of you because you think it's a battered women's shelter and women just stay there for a few days. For some women, it's not a few days. It could be a year or more. In my case, it was 8 months. But those 8 months were the best 8 months I have spent before now. After I came out, since I came to the US, until that time, those were the best 8 months I had. Because my son had his first birthday at the shelter. I have pictures. We had our Christmas at the shelter, and that was his first Christmas, and I couldn't believe the amount of gifts that we were given. And I thank you for supporting places like Alexandra House. We had our Easter at Alexandra House, and not only that, they helped us to move to our own apartment. At this time, because of my immigration status, I had to be referred to a service that helped immigrants, women, and refugees. It was a support group, and that support group helped me. From that support group, I got an immigration lawyer that filed a petition on my behalf. And today, I have a status to remain and work here. Also, I was referred to mental health therapy. Mental health therapy was a welcome difference for me because in my country, if you are going to mental health therapy, then you are really, really, really crazy. And you are already walking naked on the street. If you are not naked on the street, your family members are the ones hiding you in the house. But I wanted to live for my child whose health had deteriorated. He wouldn't gain even 1 pound from that. Every month that he was evaluated by health practitioners, he was either gaining close to 1 pound or losing weight. And I thank God, after we moved to our own apartment, and they checked him 4 weeks after. He gained 1 pound and 4 ounces. That means a lot to me as a mother, and I'm glad that ever since he's been doing well, he's been growing, he's a very good child. Sometimes I think it was my mom that came back to me in the form of a boy, because he behaves like an adult in his thinking, and the way he helps me, I couldn't believe that somebody of his age will be doing that. And even sometimes the things he tells me, I look at him again to be sure that he's the one saying that to me. So I'm really grateful to God for this child. And because I didn't see anybody standing out and speaking as a victim and a survivor, I decided to put my face to my story, because I do know that there are many more women, including men and children, going through the same thing. It's not only women that go through human trafficking or domestic abuse. There are women, there are men, and there are children. In fact, according to the United Nations, 50% of human trafficking victims around the world are children, followed by women and then men. So we need to come together and show love and use our eyes to hear by paying attention to body language, because you never know. You could be in contact with a victim of human trafficking, and you might just be the one that will rescue that victim. If that public health nurse didn't help me at that time, I don't think I would have survived. And I don't know what would have happened to my child. So I thank you this morning for having me here. God bless you.
Can you believe they took all of them, all these kids, just for the wants and the needs in prison? Sure,
If you have questions, I would like to take your questions.
You talk about body language. Can you tell me what to look for?
Okay.
Please.
Well, yes, you will see the person is either afraid or fidgeting. And sometimes they will lie. I lied so many times. So just look, the body language doesn't lie. You will see fear written all over. When they call the police, if they had paid attention to the body language, they would have been the one to rescue me. But they didn't.
You want to tell us a little bit about our website and what you're doing with your
TV show. Okay, yes. 3 years ago, through the help of my therapist, I started a TV show by going to a class. And there is a lady here today at the back, Laura, who was my classmate at that class at the North Metro TV. After taking the class, we were told that we could produce our own TV show. And I found that that was an opportunity for me to start talking about this human trafficking issue to rescue other victims. Really, if we continue to put out negativity, it could be overwhelming. I don't want people to be overwhelmed. I want people to embrace it, even though it is so negative. And I'm trying to put it out in a way that people can embrace it to rescue others. For example, there were neighbors who said they saw me peeping through the window. There was a girl who said she felt something was not right because she always saw me peep through the window. You know, I want people to know that most of the time, that is how it happens. It's not only when somebody is on the streets or in a farm. So I'm using the TV show to do that by bringing out different organizations that are working with victims of human trafficking and different services that are available to victims of human trafficking. There is also a website for it called imprisonedshow.com, and there is a Facebook page. And my goal is to educate the public about human trafficking in a way that people will embrace it, want to know more, and pay more attention. And you know, if you're doing an effort like that, you can't strive much without some form of funding. And I don't have that funding much. I have a hair braiding business that I'm making a little from, and it is from that little I am putting into this effort. Now, we are at a point where it's beginning to grow more. So I need help from others by making stuff to sell. So I decided to make a dress like this through a tailor in Nigeria and bracelets so that we could raise money to fund some of these things. For example, this year I was planning that we're going to go to Canada because Minnesota is number 13 in the US for human trafficking, according to the FBI. And one of the reasons why is because of the Canada border with Minnesota. So I planned for us to go to Canada and connect with organizations over there and see, but then we can't go to Canada without money. We have to either pay for tickets or pay for bus if we have to drive ourselves to the place. So I need funding to be able to do this. Also, at the studio right now, we borrowed their equipment out. I want us to grow such that we have our own equipment so we can go at any time. This equipment, we have to borrow it from certain time to certain time, meaning that we are limited. We can't be free to just jump up and say we want to go out now and shoot some videos or even follow investigative stories about this. There are so many things, being the journalist in me, there are so many stories I miss, not because I didn't know, but because there was no funding to enable me to pursue it. If I have to stay at the shop and braid hair, I will have to stay because that is where we pay the bills. And that is part of what I'm going to use to still fund the TV show. So I am limited to that. My background was in print journalism. I am just learning broadcast journalism. And I tell you, it's very, very different because it's much more technical. So I need help with that. If we have our own editing suite, it will help us to do more. It will help us to cover more ground. I plan to go to Minnesota's, far places, different neighborhoods, and find out what is going on there, or tell people how to look for human trafficking in their community. There are many, many people here that are being trafficked, even within the state of Minnesota, let alone those that are being trafficked out or those that are being trafficked into Minnesota.
Did this man who treated you so badly, did he ever get a charge for the crime?
No. Unfortunately, that is the system, the court system always look for evidence. They told me it's not that we don't believe you, but because we don't have a tangible evidence. So they said we advise you to go to therapy. It was painful. There is only one judge that is faithful, and that judge is God. It might take long to us, but he always judges in the end. Because most of the time, you can't see the tangible evidence that you are looking for. And that's why it's important to look for the body language. The only people that understand this are those working one-on-one with victims. And if you go to the Homeland Security website, you will find a lot of information there. They train their staff to identify, but then they are not the court. And if there's only one victim involved, the court does not pay much attention to it, except there is a big post. And when you ask immigration lawyers, they tell you what we find is one individuals. And when you add all those individuals together, we're talking about a lot of numbers.
Do you still have any contact with Alexandra House?
Oh yes, Alexandra House is my family house. I still have contact. Last year I started a fundraiser for the children at Alexandra House called Back to School. And this year I'll be doing the same thing in August. Because when I was there, I saw other children that were older than my son, that were school children going to school from Alexandra House. Some of them were taught inside the Alexandra House, and some of them go out to school. I don't know where they go to school, but they go out. So those children, I think when it's back to school and families are shopping for their children, I would like the opportunity to shop for them because I take them as my family members.
Because of the sequestering, they're going to be cutting a lot of these shelters, and the funding will not be there. So do you know anything about that?
I do know that they've been cutting funds and cutting and cutting and cutting. You know, now those kind of services cannot rely on the government anymore as much as they used to do. The public need to come together. People like you and me and others need to come together to start helping. And you know, a little thing you do goes a long way. Last year when I did the fundraising for those kids, I raised over $1,000 in terms of materials and money to put it together and give things to the kids. I had people coming to my shop with backpacks, pencils, crayons, and all the things needed for school. I went to Walmart and they let me shop for school materials for those kids. So I think, you know, the public need now to start coming together to help those kind of services.
If you have more questions, you can see Bukola over in the fellowship hall, and everything's waiting for you over there, so go over and have a cup of coffee and some refreshments, and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you for coming.
I see the sun in the hills where we are one. And I climb up so high to the diamond in the sky. Give me a star in mountains. Give me a star enclosure. I said there ain't no stopping me now. Give me a start in mountains, give me a start in closure. Give me a start in mountains, give me a start in closure. I said I'm finally free to be me, boy, you see, yeah. I left the past behind me, yeah, 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 yeah. There is no time to waste now, I'm gonna take the world on. No, 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 if you ain't good, then get out my way. Give me a start in mountains, give me a start in closure. Give me a start in mountains, give me a start in closure. I said I've been there before and no more, that's the door, yeah. I'm climbing up the rocks now, yeah, 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 yeah. The sun is shining on me, I'm gazing at the valley. Now I see that it's all there waiting for me. There ain't no stopping me, stopping 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 me. I can feel it, I can feel it, yeah. I can feel it in my veins, in my fingertips, yeah. I can feel it, I can feel it, yeah. I can feel it in my veins, in my fingertips, yeah. Fingertips, 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 yeah, 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 yeah. Give me a start in mountains, give me a start in closure. Give me a start in mountains, give me a start in closure. I said you're gone, you're gone. I said you're gone, you're gone. I said you're give me a start in mountains, give me a start in closure. Give me a start in mountains, give me a start in closure. Give me a start in mountains, give me a start in closure. Give me a start in mountains, give me a start in closure. I said you're gone, you're gone, you're gone. Oh, what's that? I said you're gone.
We light this candle in honor of victims who have lost their lives as a result of human trafficking, and we hope that their soul rests in perfect peace.
So we're talking about something that is of global scale. So we have people from the United States who have significant demand for hearts, kidneys, lungs, livers. We have people from Israel who express the same demands, people in Germany and England. And they go all over the place. It's important to distinguish the difference between the demand for human body parts, such as organs, versus the demand for human body parts, such as tissues, heart valves, tendons for knees, and things such as that. Even foreskin from babies. Huge huge cosmetic demand. So cosmetic companies and also companies that process human tissues to do any number of things with those tissues, but that end up bringing some benefit for us, only we never really know about it. So the next time a person goes in for a knee operation and they're told which kind of bone do you want, human bone or pig bone, well, they just think, well, there was some legitimate process by which this bone was obtained.
Okay.
But what we know is that there are lots of gaps in the system. He pillaged body parts from funeral homes in the Bronx, in Harlem, in Pennsylvania, and then sold them all over the place. Falsified records, and his agreements generally were, I pay you $1,000 to get access to one corpse, and $1,000 per corpse. And in exchange for that $1,000, I get access to that body part late at night or whatever. They would stuff plumbing piping back into the bodies after pillaging the bodies of bones so that it wouldn't be deflated, so that when the relatives came for the funeral, it would look as if the bodies were whole. What relatives did not know is that their deceased loved ones had been pillaged for parts. About 5 years ago, there was a person arrested, euphemistically called Dr. Death, who was responsible, said to have profited perhaps somewhere in the millions on human trafficking. You know, to get a kidney on the black market, one ends up spending somewhere between $150,000 to $250,000. The person who ultimately is the vendor of that organ receives maybe $1,000, maybe $3,000. Supposedly, Isaac Rosenbaum's victims, if you were, received about $10,000. So you see that huge gap. So who's making money in that in between? Sometimes it's people who call themselves transplant coordinators, who are really body part brokers. They make a lion's share, and then they build in luxury systems that are associated with this. So it's not all that, you know, there's the person who needs the organ pays $150,000.
They took me from my home when I was just so young. I don't know who I am. I'm supposed to be your son. All they do is just treat me so bad. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I wanna